10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 252. Hey everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, 252. We're getting up there. Thanks for joining us once again. And this week we are going to continue our series on Miles Davis and some of the things that make him one of the best musicians who ever lived and ever played jazz. So before we jump into the show, just wanted to remind you that if you're looking for a way to support this podcast and get a whole bunch of jazz education materials in return, you can support us on Patreon, which is a platform where you can support the creators that you enjoy directly for a small monthly fee. And you will get a PDF and audio examples with every single episode that we've ever done here on the show. So that's over 250 episodes at this point of jazz materials waiting for you there. So you can go over to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up, and you will get instant access to the whole back catalog of everything we've ever put out. Got to thank some new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $3 patron, Ron. Thank you to our new $5 patron, Billy. And thank you to Vernon for editing your pledge from $3 up to $5. Welcome to our Patreon family, and it is a great place to be. We've got so many wonderful people over there supporting us. So 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners. All right, let's jump into today's episode. We are going to discuss what may be Miles Davis's most popular solo ever played. And this is off of the most popular jazz record that Miles Davis ever put out. And in fact, the most popular jazz record that is ever made in history. We're going to talk about his solo on Freddie Freeloader off of Kind of Blue. And the topic that we're going to dive into today is using space, using silence. And I know that a lot of you probably consider this a boring topic, and you're going to go, oh, I'm going to turn off the podcast now before he starts talking about resting. But really, if you ignore this aspect of playing, you're really going to be in trouble. Have you ever hung out with somebody who just won't stop talking? They never take a break. They never rest. They never give you any silence. That's what it's like to listen to somebody play who just never stops. Even some of the most busy musicians, the musicians that played the most notes, they understood how to balance that with space because it just becomes too much to listen to after a while if you don't know how to use space effectively. And Miles Davis' solo on Freddie Freeloader might be one of the most effective uses of space that I have ever encountered in my life studying jazz. I really truly think this is an absolute masterpiece. Now, when you hear me mention this solo, you're probably already singing it in your head a little bit because it's so simple and it's so catchy, it's so memorable. But what I want you to do, because I obviously can't play the recording on the podcast due to copyright issues, and I'm not going to play the whole solo on tenor because that just kind of defeats the purpose. I want you to really hear how Miles is playing it. I want you to pause this podcast, go into your streaming app or your CD collection or your record collection, and I want you to listen to his solo right now. So go ahead and pause the show, listen to the solo all the way through, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, welcome back. Now, if you haven't heard that for a while, isn't it just as good as the first time you ever listened to it? It stands the test of time. That whole record really stands the test of time. But did you notice how much time he spends not playing? How much time he spends resting? And it really makes the stuff that he does play so much more effective when it's juxtaposed against so much space. It also really allows you to hear what the rhythm section is doing. And I would imagine it gives him a chance to really lock in with the rhythm section and check out what they're doing and then really play with them, okay, instead of over them. And that's another really important facet of this solo. So what I've done is I've compiled some statistics from this solo. And I think they're really going to surprise you when I start to tell you exactly how much he rests during this solo. When you're listening to it, it comes together as a package. But if you really start to analyze how much he's actually not playing, it's really surprising and very impressive, I must say. All right, so first, let's talk about how long this solo is. So it is 73 measures total, 6 choruses over Freddie Freeloader. Okay, so keep that in mind. The total amount of bars that he's playing for is only 73. And that's going to make these other numbers that I give you be even more surprising. So the instances where Miles Davis rests for 2 beats or more are 24 times throughout this solo. So that means a half note rest or longer. That's a lot of half note rests in 6 choruses over the blues. Now, check this out. The number of instances where he rests for 3 beats or longer are 18, okay? That's a lot right there. That's 3 beats. That's 3/4 of the measure. He does that 18 times. This is the stat that really blows my mind. The amount of 4-beat rests that he has in 6 choruses, that means taking an entire measure off from playing, is 8 instances of that. When's the last time that you played a solo where you took 8 whole note rests at some point in your solo? Man, that's a lot of space. And the thing about it is that it doesn't even sound like he's trying to use those big, long spaces. It's just that that's what's appropriate for the statement he's trying to make. And I think that's the really amazing part. That's the thing that we can come back to. Okay, here's some more stats. I'm really getting into the weeds here, but I kind of enjoyed doing this. Okay, so out of these 73 measures, there's a total of 292 beats in those 73 measures. 80 beats out of the 292 were spent resting. So if you do the math on that, that means 27% of his solo is space. Over a quarter of his solo is spent not playing. And it's just a beautiful thing. So I think what we can take from this is that we all need to use a little bit more space in our solos. And here's the thing, maybe you're the type of player that does not want to use quite that much space. That's totally fine. If that's not what you hear in your head and you want to be a little bit more busy of a player, that's totally cool. That doesn't mean that we can't take a lesson from Miles and understand how important space is. I think I've told this story before, but I'll never forget when I was in college and I was playing for Clark Terry, and he was critiquing my solo after we got done, and he just told me, hey, Nick, maybe you should take the damn horn out of your mouth every once in a while and let there be some space. And that really, really made an impression on me, right? When Clark Terry tells you something, you tend to pay attention. And that really made me think about space. You know, there has to be a little bit of silence to make the notes that you are playing more meaningful, okay? So I'm not asking you to completely change your style of playing and play more like Miles Davis and, play a quarter of your solo as rests, but I am telling you, just think about if you're using space effectively when you're soloing. And maybe you're not. And maybe you need to figure out how to put a little bit more silence in there. So what I'm going to do for the Patreon members this week is for the $3 members, I am going to put my transcription of Freddie Freeloader solo into concert, B flat, E flat, and bass clef. And that whole transcription is going to be waiting for you on the Patreon site this week. And for the $5 members, I'm also going to drop a backing track to Freddie Freeloader so that you can start recreating Miles' solo and really understanding how he uses that space. Now, what I want you to do for homework this week is I want you to take 2 choruses of Freddie Freeloader, and I want you to write a little solo for yourself using as much space as you possibly can. And what I want you to do is I want you to try to use several instances of those extended periods of silence. So I want you to include at least 2 instances of a full 4-beat silence. Now, it doesn't have to square with the measure. You don't have to do like the beginning of a measure to the end of a measure. You could do it you'll see the way that Miles really handles this is that he'll like rest starting on beat 3 and then won't come in until the end of 3 in the next measure. So you can cross the bar line with that 4 beats of silence. But I really want you to concentrate and force yourself to use those extended periods of rest, because you're really going to have to think about what you're writing on either side of those rests. So these 2 choruses that you're going to write is going to be all about the juxtaposition between the notes that you choose and the rhythms that you choose and the space around them. And I think this is going to be kind of tough for a lot of you, because you're always just thinking about what notes should I play? What notes should I play? And you're not thinking about what notes should I not play, right? What space should I not fill up with playing? Think about it like a visual artist leaving negative space in their creation to make the space that they do fill that much more impactful to the viewer. Okay? You're trying to do that for your listener. All right, let me know any questions that you have. I really hope that this episode is useful. It's quite a departure from what we usually do, where I'm usually, writing something out for you. This time, we're just going to observe the stuff that's not there. And I hope this makes you think from a different angle. I know it really made me think about things completely differently. Let me know if you have any questions. You can get in touch with me on the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group, or you can always email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Hope you're all doing really well out there. Really looking forward to the next episode, and I hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. All right, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good weekend. Bye.